Okay.
And it looks like we're live on YouTube now, so let's
All right, ready to go? All right, apologize, everybody. We've had a few technical difficulties. We need to up our budget for some, no, I'm just kidding. Working on a low budget. Again, since going around the room here is a little more difficult, I will ask that if you have a comment or something that you want to say because it's your property, or so when at that point in time, then you can mention your name and where you're from and what you do. Is that acceptable? Okay. So we can start off again. Thank you for joining us today. We'll get going here on our virtual meeting. We'll start right away with our I'm sorry, we have no presentation, so we'll do nuisance properties. All right, so 761 North 29th Street. We had no calls last. Okay, what happened?
I think someone got it on Joe and is moving on his own.
Their order is different.
Just leave it right there.
Do you guys want, the order is a little bit different. Do you want me to leave it on the screen or go to the individual?
Go to the individual.
Okay.
Okay, okay. So 624 North 33rd would be, okay, here we go. Okay, that is fine. 624 North 33rd Street. Looks like we've got a broken window. Do we have calls for service?
This was actually not on my list that I received.
Okay.
I can just give me 1 second and I'll look it up.
Oh, no worries.
No calls for service.
Okay.
Yeah, the window is being hidden by the
Okay.
by the marker.
DNS? Do we have someone from DNS?
I didn't see.
Okay. We'll wait to see what happens there then. Okay, let's go to the next property. 2933, 37 West Wells Street. We've had reports of public drinking, fighting, loud noise complaints. Give me a second here. We had 4 calls for service with cleanup orders last month. What do we have this month for calls for service?
This month, there's no nuisance calls.
And again, if anybody has something you want to comment on any one of these properties that we're going to go through today, please either go through chat or speak up, and we will get that information or answer those questions. Next property. 2928 West Wells Street. Complaints of public drinking, fighting, loud noise. Last month, we had 2 calls for service and pending orders, and calls for service this month.
There are no nuisance calls for this address.
Next slide. 2936 West Wells, possible gang activity, suspected drug dealing. We had 1 call for service and periodic orders last month. Calls for service this month.
We do have 1 911 abuse.
And just a question, because I believe last month was the same thing. Are these looked at some point down the road if they're continual month to month, or we really need more than one, say, as far as a month's time in ongoing to be a problematic say tenant or situation?
Yeah, so we constantly look at the calls for service with our multiple occurrence list that we get monthly. And say there was 4 calls for 911 abuse last month, and this month I saw it on the list again. We do keep track of those addresses. We have an Excel sheet that has all the addresses that we keep track of.
Okay.
And if we're monitoring them or what we're gonna do, something we do keep in mind though is what apartment numbers they're coming from. So if we do see it's like a problem tenant, we can contact the owner regarding which one we see a
Okay.
high call volume.
And depending on what the 911 call was about.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
mean, sometimes 911 abuse is just an open line with like kids crying, things
Gotcha.
like that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next. 2922 West Wells Street, possible gang activity and fighting. We had 3 calls for service last month, no orders.
2922.
2922 West Wells.
For that, there's no calls for service.
Somebody have something to say about 2922?
Do they have an update on? Did they check into the gang activity?
building
They
right
said
here.
they would have a update.
As far as us, our bicycle officers have been looking at that, but right now we their attention has been turned towards I believe it's 27th, 28th and CLYBOURN area that they're having a high presence and arrests this last week. So they their attention has been turned somewhere else
Okay.
right now, but they are constantly investigating it.
Okay, thank you. Next. 2836 West Wall Street, complaints of constant fighting, suspected drug dealing, noise complaints, public drinking. What do we have here? 2836. We only had 1 call and no orders. Calls for service this month?
1 nuisance call, 911 abuse.
Must be who?
This one coming.
Yeah, Zora's hand on.
Did she type in anything that she wants to speak?
Not yet.
No. Okay. Next slide. Elizabeth? Oh.
Did y'all get kicked out?
No. 2820 West Wall Street. Public drinking, noise complaints, fighting. 2 calls for service last month, no orders. This month's calls for service.
There's 4 nuisance calls, batteries, theft, and 911 abuse.
Okay. 761, I'm sorry, next slide. 761 North 29th Street, public drinking, noise complaint, excessive loitering. We had no calls for service last month, no orders. Calls for service this month.
There's no nuisance calls at the property.
Next. Uh, 907 North 26th Street, suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering, complaints of BB guns being used against residents. We had 2 calls last month, no orders. Calls for service this month.
There's 3 nuisance calls, 911 abuse, property damage, and shots fired.
Mhm. Okay, so with shots fired last month and then again this month, Jessica, how is, and then we know that the property has been sold to a new owner, but is still being managed by Mr. Kasdorf's management team. How is that, or where would we be at this point with 2 months in a row of that? Are we anywhere close to a letter or a meeting or?
Well, we are in constant contact with the Kasdorf property management. They email us with updates or questions or concerns that they're having. As far as like nuisancing or anything like that, I'd have to see when the new owner took ownership, because when there's a new owner, nuisancing starts all over. So if one shots fired was last month and then this one was this month, but in between it was sold, that other one wouldn't count towards the new owner.
Okay. Yeah, I believe, yeah, I can't say for sure if by the time the meeting or that last report, whether it was done or not.
It is something though that our, because we are in between captains right now, our new captain's getting promoted today. This is something that we could, potentially have a meeting to meet with the new owner and express what we see in the calls for service that we've had in the past and what we see that did work and didn't work.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dwayne, you had something?
Yeah, the sale of the building was last month, the beginning of last month when they sold the building, and the last owners, he's still the manager of the building.
May I ask who the new property owner is? Are they new to the near west side, or are they do they own other properties in the area?
We don't know if they own other properties. I do know that they are called Skynet. That's the name that he gave us before.
Yep, and this is Colin, and I'm representing Kasdorf Property Management. I don't believe that they have any properties that are in the near west, and that this would be their first. And again, with us continuing, the day-to-day management, it'll be kind of us fielding these calls and being in contact with the police.
We do have a question that has come in the chat asking how tenants are screened.
Yeah, we do complete background checks, criminal checks, and so we have a preset background check with background credit score and things like that. And so most of the tenants that we have are good tenants. They've been here for years. When we do get a bad tenant, I guess, would slip through the crack, we try to we work on either removing them or just stopping the activities as soon as we can.
I think the host got to.
Excuse me, Skylar, I have a question. This is Bobby McQuaid, Community Safety and Outreach Specialist for NWS Side Partners. There has been, I would just say in the past less than 90 days, a couple shootings and a major fight that was outside of Kasdorf properties. Have there been any evictions, or have you guys did any investigation to see what tenant is bringing that kind of traffic to the building if it's not a tenant themselves?
Well, as far as what I know, the first shooting last month was there was 2 cars that were driving by. So from what we know, it wasn't anyone even affiliated with our building. It just so happened outside of our building. And then this time, we know who was out there, and we have been in contact with them, because from what we know, that either one of them shot back or something. So they wouldn't provide us with a statement. They said that they didn't know who it was, and I know that they didn't provide the police with a statement either. Officer Wittenberger, is there any update on the previous one?
Not that I know of right now.
Okay.
So to answer Bobby's question, then it's not somebody that's in the building as far as a tenant or a tenant association?
We're having a hard time getting any information from the tenants that were outside. That last one seemed to be directed at the building and tenants that were outside. The first one, it seemed like it had nothing to really do with any of our tenants, as it was 2 cars that were driving by.
Right.
Those cars we've been looking for and we have not seen outside of our property parked. But this one, you know, tenants were directly involved. And so we're trying to communicate with them. One of them that was outside is a caretaker that has been living here for, I think, like 5 years. And so he was hanging outside, and we're trying to get more information from him, but he hasn't really spoke. But with him, I know he wasn't involved. It was the other people that were outside.
But maybe too scared to say anything.
Yeah, yes.
So Skylar, in regards to the fight that happened, those appeared to be tenants involved in that altercation. Have you gotten to the bottom of that, or have any complaints or anything or notices been issued to your tenants about kind of behavior and the constant hanging out in front of the building?
Yeah. So we
Still got that video of that fight over there.
So we in terms of that, I think the fight was last month, correct?
Yes.
And so I think our security footage we didn't have the storage. It, for some reason, wasn't recording. So we did get it upgraded this month. And so we didn't have the footage to necessarily see who it was. But we have been closely monitoring that. And as far as we're aware, there hasn't been a fight since. And I mean, we are walking through the building every hour, if not every 30 minutes of both properties. And reviewing the security footage, and anything that we do see, we are immediately calling the police. And, you know, so as of right now, we haven't been able to pinpoint an exact tenant.
Okay, Skylar, two things, and then I'll move past it. First thing is that if you're interested in seeing the video, there's a few copies around here. That's the first thing. The second thing is, do you guys have a security guard out there monitoring the property at this point?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Are there any plans to get a security guard?
It isn't. I did bring it up last month, and we were trying to see what we could do this month, and then kind of with the shooting that did happen, that was most likely correlated with a tenant. I am going to bring it up again to see what we can do, but it's in discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Next.
That's Sam Castroff property.
917 North 20, well, just go through. 917 North 26th Street, suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering and fighting. What do we have this month for calls for service?
At that property, we have no nuisance calls.
And that's what I wanted to do. Thank you very much. So you runs the show around here. Next, please. 2848 West Wisconsin, loitering between the buildings, public drinking, suspected drug dealing and gambling. Let's see, 2848, 2 calls for service, multiple orders last month, calls for service this month.
There are 3 nuisance calls, battery, entries, and 911 abuse.
All right. Still no DNS. Nope. Of course, somebody informed them he was on last. Yeah. Next. 730 North 29th Street. Loitering, suspected drug dealing, public drinking, no calls, and orders. I remember, but there were some orders last month. Calls for service.
No nuisance calls.
No calls. Next. 2809 West Highland Boulevard, loitering, public drinking, suspected drug dealing. We had 1 call for service and we had a cleanup order that was referred to the contractor. Calls for service this month.
No nuisance calls.
Next. 2841 West Highland Boulevard, loitering, public drinking, suspected drug dealing, fighting. 2 calls for service last month. And some cleanup orders. Calls for service this month.
There's 2, subject with weapon and trouble with subject.
Jessica, may I ask a question about the status of with Smart Asset? I know they were, first of all, is there anyone representing Smart Asset on this meeting today?
Yes, I'm here. Sarah from Smart Asset.
Okay, as far as the cleaning orders, have you guys taken care of those violations?
We do, but they keep occurring. People keep throwing trash in the back of the buildings.
Do you suspect that this is not coming from your building?
I think part of it is. And part of it is neighboring buildings are throwing stuff in our back alley by the dumpster.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys did indicate that there was going to be security around?
Yep.
So your security hasn't seen anything?
No, he patrols between both of the buildings. Not necessarily outside so much as in the buildings and in the laundry facility areas. But he hasn't seen anybody dumping stuff back there.
One place at one time.
Jessica, is there is this property close to being called in or close to a nuisance?
Are you looking
status
for,
type
are you
deal?
looking for Jess Ballinger? She's not on the call.
Oh, that's the Jess. I was looking for Jessica Ballinger. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just letting you know. As far
Okay.
as from police,
Yes,
I mean,
Officer Rittenberg.
no problem. Not at this time. We could, it's something that we can definitely visit in the future, but we kind of have some other more egregious buildings that we want to look at first and have meetings with and look at nuisancing. So it's not off our radar or not gonna happen, but there's some things that Captain Johnson, I'm gonna bring to his attention first to scheduling meetings and talk about nuisancing properties.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Kate.
All right, thank you. Next. $835 North 23rd Street, loitering, public drinking. We had 5 calls for service last month and multiple orders. Calls for service this month.
There's 4 nuisance calls, all entries.
And to continue on with what Bobby was mentioning on the last property is 835, since we've seen a consistent pattern with nuisance calls over several months in multiple issues. Anything with this property being looked at closer for any type of a nuisance?
Yes, we did attempt to set up a meeting with Jomila. They unfortunately had to cancel last minute. It was supposed to be this morning. So I did already talk to the city attorney's office and my sergeant regarding nuisancing. But it's ultimately up to Captain Johnson, which
Okay,
he's not here today. I'll talk to him on Monday.
not a problem. If you answered our question that we're looking for, thank you very much.
Is there anyone from Jomila on this call today? Thank you.
Next. 3345 West Highland Boulevard, public drinking, suspected drug dealing, noise complaints. We had 7 calls for service last month and periodic orders.
Oh, sorry.
Calls for service?
There's 6 nuisance calls, 911 abuse, trouble with subjects, and burglaries. This was a this was another one that we were going to discuss this morning that wasn't discussed, and that is on our radar, and that I'll speak to about the captain.
Thank you.
And hi, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Gary Cook is here from Jamela. With respect to 835, the issues stem from essentially 3 tenants, one of which has been already evicted, one we believe is out, and we are checking for abandonment, and the third is in the process of being evicted. And with respect to 3345, the problem units we have found are their program units, and we're in the process of phasing out the program tenants. These are, it's a tough situation, but we are having more and more problems with the program units, and so we have just decided that it's better to cut our ties with that and alleviate all of the problems that we're having. So we are in the process of cleaning out these buildings and turning them into very, very, very positive community assets.
Okay, great. So can you, so that everybody knows firsthand then the problems that you're having with program, can you let us know what program that this is that you're no longer going to work with?
It's a variety of programs. It's community advocates. It is the guest house. I believe there is one other, and I'm filling in for the same reason we had to cancel our meeting this morning with the District 3. We're also kind of scrambling for this. But I believe that there is a third program as well. And the problem is we don't get to screen these tenants. Our contract is with the program itself, and they're using it for temporary housing. And now we've always worked very closely with them in the past for nipping any sort of problems in the bud, but it's becoming more and more difficult to get problem tenants out. We're seeing a much higher incident of problem tenants moving in. So we're looking to make these solely Jamela tenants from this point forward. And of course, then they're going to go through our rigorous screening process, background checks, all of that sort of good stuff to make sure that these are the type of people that are going to fit in the community.
Thank you for that information. Just curious, does this then not only refer to 3345, does this refer to all your locations that you're looking at closer with tenants on programs?
That is correct. It's going to be a company-wide reduction, elimination of program tenants.
Do you have an approximate time period as to when the phasing will be complete, when the phasing out will be completed?
That's a very tough question to answer. We've got a lot. We've got a lot of different types of leases. Of course, we're only allowed to evict/move out at the end of lease terms. So we have started that progress, but some of the leases are a little bit longer than we would like to see. We're working to get this done. I would hope 6 months is a time frame to get it completed, but it could be up to a year because, like I said, some of these leases are for a year, and without cause, it's tough to sever the ties.
Can you just give me a bulk? I'm not going to hold you to the number, but a ballpark number of how many units that we'd be looking at?
Ooh, any guess I would give you would be just kind of ballpark, probably a third. But I do not know how accurate that is.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just kind of me personally want to know what you're up against here in regards to.
And it's 90% of the calls. We're looking at the police calls, and 90% of what we're seeing are program units. So for such a small percentage of our population to have that many problems, it's just become a burden for us to continue to work with them.
Well, thank you for coming forth with that. About a year or more ago, we were asked the same question and got a different answer. So thanks for the clarity.
It's something that it's a recent change of winds, and it has gotten to the point where the decision to sever ties is a much more beneficial to all parties than the decision to continue with it.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you. Next. 4218 West Highland Boulevard, suspected drug dealing, excessive trash. We had, all right, that is a foreclosure. Do we have any calls for service? Laundry here?
Yes, 2 nuisance calls, trouble with subject and battery.
Officer Wittenberg, is it true that this property has been foreclosed on by the city?
Yes.
So are these squatters that's in there?
No, it's not foreclosed yet.
Okay.
So it's in the process. I just talked to Assistant ACA Huff today about it. She stated that usually the city right now is going on, about this time is going on to their 4th in run foreclosures, but due to COVID and everything, they haven't even started their 2nd, which this is in that batch. So whenever that is open and they start doing that, which is, it is open, but when they do it, this is going to be foreclosed on.
Okay, thank you.
Next property. 207 North 36th Street, fighting suspected domestic violence. 0 calls, 0 orders last month. Calls for service.
There are no nuisance calls.
Just a quick bit, this area is going to be one of the areas that we do door hangers for domestic violence awareness. It's not just specific to this house, but around a few blocks in that area.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Next. 206-208 North 36th Street, dumping in alley, suspected drug dealing. 0 calls, exterior orders referred to contractor. Calls for service.
There are no calls for service.
Next. 225 and 227 North 36th Street. Large amounts of trash, abandoned burned vehicle, nice. Excessive traffic. 0 calls. And looks like referred to contractor for DNS. Calls for service.
No nuisance calls.
Does anybody know if this car is still there? Thank you. Next. 1235 North 33rd Street. Complaints about excessive loitering, unsupervised children at night, threatening neighbors with violence, shots fired. 1 call for service, and we have a 1 trash complaint. And the call was for a weapon. Calls for service this month.
No nuisance calls.
I'll ask again, anybody here from DNS? Next, please.
For the last property, I believe the people were evicted. I know we had got an update for that not too long ago about them evicting the people in that property.
Thank you. Next. 3302 West McKinley. Complaints about excessive loitering, unsupervised children, threatening neighbors, shots fired related to the family occupying next door. There was no calls. Trash was referred. Calls for service this month.
There are, sorry, I'm looking through my list. No nuisance calls.
Next. 822 North 27th Street. Window open, possible squatter. We didn't have any calls, no orders. Calls for service.
There are no calls for service. Actually, I'm sorry. Nope, no calls for service. That's back in June.
Next. 617 North 23rd Street, public drinking and loitering. 0 calls. Order something maybe under eviction. Calls for service this month.
No nuisance calls.
Marquette had 2 for trouble with subject.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. All right. And I'll ask again here, do we have somebody from Smart Assets?
Yep, I'm still here.
That's okay. Thank you very much. I believe last month we talked about with the people drinking out in front and that there was some evictions that were going to happen. Did that take place at this location?
Yep, those two guys are out as of Monday. And the guy that was always on the front steps, I had a talk with him and told him that, you know, it's cool if he wanted to do that, but he had to do it in his apartment, not outside.
Okay, great. Just an observation, and again, since these properties are so close, even the ones on Michigan, to the hotels in my rental office and actually the area that we have properties in, unfortunately, I mean, I drive by them 4 or 5 times a day. Really never had a lot of complaints in the past. Every once in a while, we'd have a little trash, but we've got the dumpster for 605 that's pretty much on the sidewalk. Quite a bit of weeds overgrown in that area, and it got picked up this morning, but after your trash pickup a couple days ago, there was quite a bit of trash that stayed on the ground for multiple days. Somewhat unusual. I don't know if you have somebody else doing cleanup, or I don't know if the lady is still, that's been there a long time, still doing your outside cleanup or not, but.
She is, yep.
Okay. Usually she's on it pretty good. But it just, again, I don't know how often everybody gets around their buildings. I see it quite a bit and I wanted to mention it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next, please. 727 North 21st Street, debris litter around trash containers. I don't know if this was just for, yeah, we didn't. Is there any calls for service at this location?
Just 911 abuse.
Is there anybody from Ogden?
Yes, I'm here. It's Jasmina.
Hey, I thought I saw you.
The picture doesn't match the property.
What's that?
The picture doesn't match the property, but we did take care of the trash. We had a tenant that.
Yeah, you are right. I'm sorry. This picture is the Patrician on Wisconsin Avenue, not yours. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. We did take care of it. We had a tenant that moved out without notice and was just leaving debris everywhere. So we've been taking care of it since the mid-August with her. So now it's gone. We are going to monitor it more.
Again, this is just like the Smart Assets properties on 23rd. I'm on 22nd Street multiple times a day and all during the week. I have to say that I'm not sure what's happening, but I don't know a week that goes by that there is not large items or trash outside on the ground with both dumpsters overflowing. So I'm not going to tell anybody what they should do. I would only recommend to look at container size and or additional pickups. But it has been this way for several months in a row, that every week it's the same thing. So again, my observation, your decision to make. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we had one call for service an entry this month.
Thank you, Tom. Next property. 2000 West CLYBOURN, people sitting out on the concrete wall drinking. I would not suspect anybody from the school to be on today. No. Has anybody, Lindsay, has anybody talked or reached out to the principal of the school or whoever's in charge of this?
We sent the letter out to the school. I have a contact with somebody else who works in the school, so I will be reaching out to him to see if I can get a contact with the principal.
And I believe Keith has been in contact with the principal to see if there are ways that we could support moving this kind of traffic along.
Yeah, yesterday there was 2 male subjects on that same wall drinking again. So it's pretty often. And I know they have staff. I know there's people there all the time. I'm just not sure why nobody is dealing with this. And if, I mean, I know they got cameras. I don't know if they have a camera on this location, but it may be a suggestion, Keith, when you pass this along, that they install a camera where I'm assuming somebody in the school, there is security that is watching this on a ongoing basis. But this is something that has not stopped. It's pretty routine. Next property. 2100 West Wells Street, overgrown weeds around the building. Oh, Barb? Barb, are you there? Where'd Barb go?
I'm here. Sorry, I had to unmute.
That's okay. Barb, did you make the contact for us?
I did. I did not, Kent.
Okay. I was going to say you don't have very high contacts because it's not been taken care of, Barb.
In 6 months.
Okie dokie. I remember the conversation now. Thanks, Kent. On it, man.
I was going to say, if you needed some help, I know somebody up there.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Next. 2804 West Kilbourn Avenue, noise complaint and trash around the building. Calls for service.
There's no nuisance calls.
Do we have anything to add on this? I know it's boarded up.
Boarded.
Yeah. Talk to the owner, Dwayne.
We did send a letter out to the owners. Nobody responded back to us, but we're in a process of trying to find a way we can reach out to them. But we do see various people. They like to have party, like a little small block parties, I guess, right there. They take chairs and everything. I know in the beginning of the summertime, they would take chairs and sit out there and parlay.
And I'm piping in, Barb Scotty. This was presented to me from a neighbor who lives across the street and has had multiple issues. Again, partying in the evening on weekends, and that's part of the trash problem. And she indicates she has called MPD.
I'm just gonna add in, I don't know, I have a email thread with our bicycle officers and ADA Ballinger. It's mostly about 2803, but my guess is maybe they got it, it's combined. They did arrest someone on 9-6 from this area for firearms, narcotics, and the person was intoxicated. And then that's a main individual in the area that is causing issues. And then they also arrested someone else that's an associate. So the bicycle officers are out there a lot conducting investigations and trying to arrest anyone that's in violation.
Thank you, Officer Wittenberger. To the team in general, like as an example, what's our best way to make sure we're getting correct addresses with a larger complex like this? It's
I think 2903 is across the street.
Yeah, it's
Yes, it
right
is.
across the street from it.
27,
But I know I live right around the corner from there. And when you come around that corner, you see a lot of people on right here by the abandoned building, just sitting and chilling. And like the officer said, there's a lot of people who sell drugs that sit over there too. Also,
Agreed.
Barb, let's go back to your question. I'm sorry. I'm wondering.
I was just concerned with Officer Wittenberger citing it as 2804, or I cited as 2804, and she said 2803. So just concerned about appropriate addresses.
That one too. 27, 25, 32.
Okay.
As far,
But
As far as the police, we just use kind of the general area of maybe when we turn the block, they might be, because it being at a vacant property gives us more reason to stop somebody. So if they see us, especially the bicycle officers turning the corner on their bikes and they're still like half a block away, they might just be congregating a little bit farther into the streets and or the other side.
Right.
So that's why we're getting 2803, and our complainant too from that block is using 2803. So, but like I said, my guess is maybe it's all combined about subjects from maybe that property walking over and hanging out, and this kind of being the hangout spot for these problem people that do stay around.
Okay.
2803.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Next. 2200 West Kilbourn, historic lofts, suspected drug dealing issues, calls for service.
2 nuisance calls, a threat, and shots fired.
Tom, does Marquette have anything on this one?
No, I don't believe we do.
Can you give me a date when the shots fired? Do you have that?
Yeah, sure. Give me 1 second. So that actually was a shooting. It was happened inside an apartment. It was a shots fired. We suspected it was a shooting, but I don't think we had a victim at the time. We force entered into the apartment and found evidence of shots fired.
Okay.
That was going to be on 8-15.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Next. 3120 West Wisconsin Avenue. Loitering, public drinking, calls for service.
There's 3 nuisance calls: entry, subject with gun, and battery.
We're doing so well. This is smart asset as well.
Okay. Someone still here with smart assets? They log off. Okay. Next. 2803 West Kilbourn, Village Apartments, suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering. We know the answer, but calls for service.
That wasn't on my list. Let me just pull it up real quick.
Okay.
It looks like it's going to be 6 calls for service.
And Scott from Jamila, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. 2803, is that one of the other properties we may have program tenants in, or are you aware of multiple calls for service here on complaints with this property?
Yep, same situation.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to confirm.
Yes, thanks.
Next property. Oh, we're at nuisance businesses now. Okay. And Family Dollar.
Normally we will wait. Jessica Ballinger will provide us with an update. I haven't heard of anything different as opposed to the store and they're contesting the license right now. So I haven't heard of anything new, but normally Jessica will give us an update on this.
Anybody have any dates of any type of court hearings? Okay. Next property. BP gas station on North 35th Street.
I would say the same with this property. Jessica normally provides the update. Only thing that we do know is that the license was denied, but we don't know when would be a final closing date or if they are going to appeal. Also, Lucas was providing security. He said that he put his contract 2 weeks ago with them.
Okay. Next property. Care Bears, 927 North 27th Street. Calls for service.
That is going to be one nuisance call battery.
Next property.
Hello, this is Gearbers. Can you hear us?
Oh, yes, thank you. Care Bears. And who are you, sir?
I'm just Gary Leesky. I'm owner and operator of Gear Bears.
Thanks for calling it or joining us today, Gary. Can you give us any type of update?
I've been watching now for the last half an hour or so, and it seems like the whole area is blanketed with all these individual problems, but they're all the same. I mean, my bartenders are out the door running these people off the sidewalk, all these crackheads that be hanging around. I myself go out there. Sometimes you can't fight with 10 or 12 people.
Absolutely.
Multiple times we had to call the police. They leave 10 minutes later, they're right back. A lot of people that are out front tavern, because of the smoking thing, they're outside smoking from the tavern.
Right.
But we have so much in the little park. Right, I'm looking at the neighborhood house garden. There's been multiple issues with all these people having barbecues and everything else in there.
Is there any security?
Multiple deaths over there.
Is there any security inside the establishment, Mr. Gary?
I have security at the door Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights.
Hold on, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. What's the hours they're there?
Yeah, it gets there 9:30, 10 o'clock in the evening.
Till what time?
Till closing.
And that's 2, 1:30?
2:30, whatever the issue is on whatever day.
2:30. Okay.
So, Mr. Liskey, you stated that you guys have called the police several times. Have the police actually showed up to the establishment?
The bicycle cops are usually around. This last issue, some guy was running around with a gun out there and they showed up 4 hours later.
But it had nothing to do with the tavern.
It was these people fighting amongst themselves out here.
Officer Wittenberg, is there a record of Gear Bears making calls?
There are several. I don't know if this is the subject with gun that he's speaking of, but on 8/29 there was one. The call was created at 11:59. A squad was dispatched at 12:04, and they were on scene by 12:07. So I don't know if that's what he was referencing. There are several calls. There's not a ton though.
Okay, thank you.
We also see that some of the people that live inside the building stand outside with the people and congregate with the people that also is doing some of the public drinking and stuff out there. Is it possible that you can maybe move the smoking thing behind the building instead of in front of the building?
Not really feasible. I mean, they'd be out in the parking lot. Of course, we got cameras, but when I have security, we lock our back door because the security man's in the front.
So he doesn't make patrols around the building. He just strictly stays in the front.
Out in the sidewalk in the front of the building area.
Okay.
Do you have his name so we can get in contact with him also?
The name of
and what company? And the company?
There's no company. I hire my own people and train them.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So if I asked you, and you've been obviously around for quite a few years, Gary.
38 of them.
What kind of suggestions would you have to combat these situations that we're experiencing in front of your place?
It's the same people every day. Should round them all up and take them down and put them in the tank a couple of times, maybe to get the idea to move around.
No, it's your responsibility. It's your business.
Okay.
Years ago, we were a little bit more aggressive, but that doesn't work these days.
And so again, most of the people that are out there are not customers of your establishment, except for
No.
one or two who
fact-
might be smoking.
In fact, a lot of times during the day, we lock our door in the front and let people in as we see them. Because of the issue out here with these people hanging out, trying to mooch cigarettes, borrow a quarter, and sell socks from Family Dollar and whatever they're out there trying to do.
Hey, Gary, is it possible that you can tell your tenants to lure some of the company they have also? Because when we be out there and see the things, we see them also, like I said, congregating with those type of people out there. Is it something?
I can issue a notice. I don't know how well that's gonna work but I will issue a notice to all my tenants.
All right.
Gary, this is Bobby McQuay, NWS Side Partners, Safety and Outreach. Is it possible that we can talk offline, get together, have a meeting to see if it's some other things that we could do to be a little bit more proactive to kind of curtail some of this loitering?
I know my bartenders are outside moving people around more than they're selling whiskey.
So can we talk after the meeting, have a meeting?
Yes, yeah, give me a call. You want my phone number?
I think we already have it, Gary.
All right, we can meet down here, or we can meet wherever you feel like meeting.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
I'd like to get this resolved too. But like I said, the things that I've been seeing for all these properties, it seems to be the same. It's the whole area is blanketed with public drinking, loitering, fighting, all this hubbub. And it's not just a personal property issue. It seems like the whole area is plagued.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, I got a question for you. I'm just noticing,
Yes.
is anybody on
Yes.
the chat needing to make any comments?
Officer Wittenberger shared the draft contact guide for those who are interested. We are waiting for the captain to approve the final copy, but you can utilize this in the meantime. And Barb had a question about security at Gare Bears, and it sounds like Bobby and Mr. Gary are going to work that out.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, well, give me a call and we'll sit down and do get ourselves synchronized.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank
All
you.
righty.
Next property. 2903 West Clybourn, Milwaukee Food, excessive loitering, suspected drug dealing, calls for service.
That one was not on my list, but I'm looking it up now. But
Thank you.
Just to provide a little context, while Officer Rittenberg is looking this up, we are working with the store manager, and he has made several improvements from last month. And we think maybe it's getting under control, but it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, go ahead.
as far as calls for service, there are no calls for this last month.
So another area that I'm by quite often, but I had noticed in the last month to 6 weeks that the property directly behind the store and then across the street going east, we've got large groups that are from these two properties that I don't think are getting along very well. And I think are part of some of that loitering that's going on his sidewalk. Witnessed some pushing and shoving and a lot of people out. It just, Savannah and Dwayne, maybe we can get some addresses and then make some contacts with the ownership of these properties after the meeting. Thank you. Next property. Quick Pick, 23rd in Wisconsin. Suspected drug dealing, excessive loitering around food truck on the side of the building. Calls for service.
No nuisance calls.
Marquette's got about a dozen. Loitering, theft, trouble subject, panhandling.
Has anybody got a chance to speak directly with anybody from Quick Pick?
MPD hasn't.
Marquette.
Yeah.
We
All right, go ahead, Dwayne.
we have reached out recently to talk to someone. It's kind of hard to speak to some of the workers that work there. They say it's nothing wrong, but for the most part, we can see the stuff that goes on out there. I don't know if they really pay attention to it or they just equate it with the food truck that sits on the side of it.
Well, 12 calls from MUPD associated with issues.
Their website, Landlord Compact, Milwaukee, Wisconsin today.
Officer Wickers,
Yes.
is it possible that we could work together to try to contact the owner and have a meeting using the information from Marquette MUPD?
Absolutely.
I will work with you on that.
That's good.
John's muffler.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, thanks, Officer Wickers.
No problem.
My last class.
Next property. Sizzle Sandwich Shop, 26th and State.
Jizzles.
Sizzles.
You know we ain't good.
Window still broken, boarded up, grease on the sidewalk. We have calls for service,
There are no nuisance calls.
and then still no one from DNS, correct? Nope.
We do know he got the big window fixed, but the door window is still busted out for the most part. We tried to we went up there before and talked to employees and also talked to managers that work there, but nobody ever reached back out to us to even get anything done. We even recently tried to get him part of a program that we was doing in the neighborhood to help him get his windows fixed, and still haven't got any feedback from him.
Okay, thank you. Next property.
Done.
Some safety updates, okay. About things that have been reported, okay. And is that it, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Lucas and
Oh.
Ken.
No.
Well, keep me out of this.
All right, guys. Hi, Trimble has been online with us since the beginning of the meeting. We touched bases maybe about a month ago during the drive-in theater that we did here at Holly-Davidson campus. And she gave us flyers about her new business. And since then, I visited her business. We've talked with her. The ambassadors was given a tour of her property, and she's online right now to give us a little bit of update. But she gets to doing good in the neighborhood in September because she opened her new business, and she has made an investment in both buildings inside the Near West Side Park area of about $75,000. And the business is located on the corner of 34th and 35th and State. Hi, are you there?
I am here.
All right, I will be quiet and let her talk for herself now.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the recognition. I'm happy to be part of the family, I'm going to call it, and we're excited to hopefully add to the community. Definitely Torch CBD is 3419 West State Street. It's a boutique style CBD full spectrum store. We sell some of everything for everyone. If you are into skin or, beauty or rolls or wraps, it is all there. So we definitely encourage and invite the community down. We had a grand opening of a block party that was very successful. So, I'm excited to be a part of the Near West Side, and we definitely are here to add nothing but greatness, more greatness to the community.
No, that's a bunch of money. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hello.
Well,
Okay.
Thank you, Kai, for giving us that update. Do you have any idea what you are going to do with front building, which for anyone that don't know was the former George Webb?
Yes, we did acquire that property about 3 weeks ago. And right now we're just in the midst of rehabbing it and bringing it up to standard. And we've had a lot of interest from daycare to a massage parlor, you know, so we've had a lot of interest. We just want to make sure we pick the right tenant and existing sort of business owner we're interested in, and someone who's going to add nothing but value again to the community. So our goal right now is just sort of rehabbing it. And that's where our money is going right now to get it to where it should be, and then definitely seek a tenant that's going to add value to the community.
Okay, thank you, Kai. And I'm not sure if you touched on it, but you do have a space for lease right next to Port. And if I'm not mistaken, it's a little less than 2,000 square feet.
It's around 2,300 square feet. It has 2 private rooms, offices, and then an open concept. So it's just white boxed right now with the 2 private rooms, obviously a bathroom, the 2 exits. We've had a lot of interest, but again, we're trying to be very selective on the type of tenant. We've definitely been in contact with the alderman in regards to who has already approached us with the type of use, because we want to make sure it's a match for us. We want to make sure it's a match for the community. We don't want to bring anyone in where the alderman is going to have an issue with the type of business that's being ran there. So we have made, contact with him, and he's sort of let us know what he wants, what he doesn't want, and we want to work with everyone, in regards to it. So we've had a lot of interest. It's just, like I said, picking the right tenant. I definitely want to do that before winter falls on us to get someone in and settle, but we're definitely being very selective. We definitely could have had it rented 2 months ago,
Right.
but we're taking our time, and we want to be conscious on who we put in there, just not whoever, just not let's just get it rented, but we want someone who is going to, like I said, add to the community, make sure it's the right fit for all.
Okay, Kai, as I indicated to you, I would love to get you in touch with our associate director, Lindsay, who's on the call right now. He's a great wealth of knowledge and resources. And if some time permits, maybe we could come and see the spot together. Lindsay, if you would like to respond to that.
Yes, I was just going to chime in and say thank you, Kia, for joining the call. We would love to see the available space that you have. We're working closely with Bruce City Match and a number of partners to help identify ready-to-go locations for entrepreneurs. So that might be a really great opportunity to match you with a well-vetted tenant. And
wonderful.
Perhaps what we could do is like a virtual tour of the property that we could share kind of far and wide.
Definitely. That would be great to do.
All right. Well, thanks again, Kai, for coming on, and we hope that you join every Landlord Compact meeting just to know what's going on.
Well, thank you for, like I said, the acknowledgement. And if ever we have any issues, we're definitely, please get in contact with me. And, we want to solve issues and solve problems and move forward with greatness. So thank you all.
Okay. And I'll be in contact with you with Lindsay.
Thank you again.
All right.
All right. Does that conclude?
Next slide. I think we're close to the end. Oh. Okay, yeah, that was canceled today. We were just going to talk about the official grand opening of the Vliet Street Oasis. It's been temporarily delayed due to rain, but Lindsay, look like you have some updates.
Yes, we'll be celebrating the grand opening next Thursday at 4 o'clock, and that's on the corner of 38th and Vliet Streets.
Okay, thank you. Next, anything? All right, some updated numbers. Anything else?
There you go, Ken.
All right, next meeting, October 8th. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out to join us. Have a good rest of your day, and see you all next month.
All right.